Good evening and once again welcome with our webcast. Tonight we're going to share with you from the Parashah again after our short break that we've had. It's wonderful to just spend time with you again. The Parashah of this week is Parashah Va'eira, which is the second Parashah of the book of Exodus. In last week's Parashah we saw how God now calls Moses to the burning bush. And there is a discussion that happens there. And when we pick up in this week's parashah, we see how God makes a declaration to Moses. God says to Moses, Moses, I am the Lord. So he reveals himself to Moses. Now, as we've already told you before, I just want to give you a brief description of this again. The way that the parashah is divided is not that they just took all of the verses, put them together and then divided them in equal numbers. No, what they do is to say, this is where we start reading, then we will continue reading until we get to the end of this particular idea or this great idea. Sometimes that great idea runs over more than one parashah. And in this case, we see how there are various ideas that run across two parashot, which is this week's one and next week's one, because we have all the plagues happening in this particular one. But we now meet Moses at this burning bush where God is revealing himself to Moses. And he's saying, Moses, I am the Lord. I'm the one that spoke to your forefathers, that spoke to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, that I've promised them that I would give them the promised land. And now God comes and he lays out in chapter 6 a whole path, a whole way in which he wants to redeem them, bring them out of the house of slavery, out of Egypt. And normally over Passover time, these four declarations, the first four declarations that is made here are the ones that we read during the Passover Seder. Well, at our Passover Seder we actually add the other three too, because there are 7 different declarations of how God comes and says, I will take you out, I will redeem you, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, then I will take you to be my own, you will be my people. And normally, this is where people stop. But if you go and read, you will see that there are actually 3 more declarations where he says, and I will also bring you into the land of Canaan, and I will give it to you as an inheritance. And true freedom is only possible once we come into our inheritance. It's not once we've been removed out of the problem. It's once we have now actually entered into our promised land, when we are able to sow and reap from our own labor. Because that is true freedom. True freedom is not to sit and hope that something will happen to you somewhere. No, true freedom is when you are at the place where you can make choices. Choices in sowing and in reaping. In doing things from which you will get an harvest. But God is now saying to Moses, Moses, I am the Lord. I am, and then we see these words, Yud Hey Vav Hey. We see those 4 letters, those 4 Hebrew letters. And God's revealing him to Moses. Then we see how when God tells him, you need to go now to Pharaoh, he is hesitant about it, and we can understand it. I mean, he killed somebody. To go back to the country, might be in trouble. And who knows what this new Pharaoh is going to do. So he says, well, I have an excuse. I don't speak too well. I'm stuttering a little bit. Then God says, don't worry, I'll send your brother Aaron with you. So, together with Aaron, he then goes down to Egypt. And here in Egypt, they go to Pharaoh. And they tell Pharaoh, God has sent us and told us that we must lead the children of Israel out. But Pharaoh is not impressed. Pharaoh does not catch this revelation of who God is. So there are two signs that takes place, the one with the snakes and the one with him putting his hand in, become leopard, take it out, put it in again, and he's clean. Once again, Pharaoh is not impressed by those signs. Then we see how the first 7 plagues now take place in this particular parasha. And by the end of the parasha, it ends with the last one of the hail, the 7th one. And every time when the plague happens, Pharaoh calls them in and says, "Come on guys, please. Let's get rid of this. You guys can go." And then once the plague stops, Pharaoh hardens his heart. Now, what is the big idea of this particular parasha? The big idea lies in those first words, where God says to Moses, "I am the Lord." And to accept the authority of God in our lives is a decision. You and I need to make a personal decision. A decision by which we will decide, are we going to accept the authority of God in our lives or not? Moses is at the burning bush. He sees this sign. He sees the bush burning. It's not consumed. It keeps on burning. And he sees how he throws down his rod. It becomes a snake. He takes it up again. And Moses makes a conscious decision to say, yes, I will accept this authority in my life. Pharaoh, on the other hand, sees the 2 signs. Now he's at the 7th plague in this particular parasha. He has seen the power of God operating. Yet, he is not in the place where he accepts the authority of God in his life. And so the big idea of this parasha is your personal choice will determine whether you will accept God's authority in your life. Whether you will accept it or reject it lies with you. Moses, he accepts it. Pharaoh, he rejects it. And we are confronted then today to say, when we look around us and we see all of the wonderful things which God do, every day we open our eyes, it's a miracle. Every moment of the day, we can see the greatness of God just around us. We can see it revealed. And when we trust Him for miracles and those things happen in our lives, it's the greatness of God. It is this who God is that is revealed to us. All along, all the time, the goodness of God is revealed to every single one of us. The question is, are we going to acknowledge it? Is this going to become part of the conviction from which we will live? Pharaoh doesn't live from that conviction. In fact, he keeps on lying, keeps on deceiving. He says, please, Moses, entreat God, ask Him to do this, to take this away from us. We have sinned. He even confesses that. He says, we have sinned before God. God is the righteous one. He's proclaiming these things with his mouth. Yet, once he's out of trouble, he just continues in his old ways. The thing that changes our lives is our own personal conviction, that personal decision that we make to say, I will accept God's authority in my life. That's the big idea of Parashah Va'eira. Are you accepting or rejecting it? The fact that I'm saying things with my mouth just because I want some advantage for myself, it's no good. It doesn't mean a thing. What really means something is when we come to that personal conviction to say, God is God, and I will submit myself to His authority. You and I have the ability, we have the right to choose. We have the right to choose whether we want to serve God or whether we don't want to serve Him. And tonight, I want to come and I want to appeal to you and say, let's not be like a Pharaoh, where all of these wonderful miracles are happening all around us. Every day, the fact that we can see, the fact that we can hear, the fact that God provides for us, those are miracles. The fact that we are alive, and that God gives us all these good things that comes from above, it's miracles. But how are we going to react to it? What is our decision? What do we choose? So, Parashah Va'eira is all about your choice and my choice. Are we going to accept it? When God spoke to Moses, Moses says, I accept. I will go. I choose to submit myself to that which God says. I will go and I will lead the people out. I will go and stand in spite of the fact that this is not a nice place to go. It wasn't a comfortable place for Moses to go to. It's Egypt. He's persona non grata there. The people don't want him there. He fled from the place. Yet, because of his obedience, he's prepared to submit himself to God's will. He's prepared to do that, but it's by choice. It's by choice. Pharaoh sees so many more miracles taking place. And he actually sees the grace of God. Because every time God is gracious to stop it, even though God knows that he will harden his heart. And sometimes that's exactly like what it is in our own lives. We harden our hearts so often when God speaks. And in spite of our hardened hearts, God still continues to be gracious to us. To be gracious to every one of us and to show his grace and let his grace and mercy just abound to us. To stop the destruction in our lives. And then once the destruction is stopped, we turn back to our old ways. Tonight, we need to make a decision. We need to decide, is God God? Is he Lord? Is he going to be a covenant God to us? Or not? Are we going to submit ourselves? Are we going to come to this place where we say, we will do whatever he tells us? Moses did. But when he comes to Pharaoh and says, God says, let my people go. Let my people leave this place. And Pharaoh hardens his heart. And in spite of the fact that he sees the signs and the wonders and the miracles taking place in front of his eyes, he keeps on hardening his heart. You see, miracles don't change our lives. Signs don't change our lives. The thing that changes our lives is our decisions. What you and I will decide. Will we decide to serve God? Will we decide to submit ourselves to his authority in our lives? That will change our lives. That changes our destiny. And not just our destiny, but also the destiny of other people. A whole nation's destiny is changed by Moses choosing to submit himself. Remember, when Moses came to that burning bush, he didn't know God. In fact, he came close. And he's standing there and he says, what is this? And when God speaks to him, it's not like it's from a position where he knew God before. No, God actually has to introduce himself to Moses. So Moses, I'm the God of your fathers. Oh, really? Yeah, I'm the God of your fathers. Moses, now I want to speak to you, and I want to call you to go and do something for me. I've prepared you all your life so that you can be the one who will do this. Maybe tonight, while you're looking at this, while you are viewing this, maybe God is speaking to you and saying, I am calling you to do something for me. I'm calling you, and in spite of the fact that you do not know the extent of my power and do not know what I can do, I'm calling you. Will you react? Will you do this? Will we be like Moses? And in spite of the fact that we do not know what the future will hold, we don't know what will happen when we might have to appear before that Pharaoh, will we be willing to submit ourselves? Will we be willing to go and do? Or are we going to be like Pharaoh? Harden our hearts and say, no. Once the danger is over, I'm back to my old ways. A lot of people are like that. Every time they're in trouble, they call on God. And then when the danger is over, we just keep on hardening our hearts. And we don't see how God's grace has just come to us. How God by His grace has given us a second chance. And another chance. And another chance. God keeps knocking on the doors of our lives. Asking, accept. Accept what I have for you. Accept my authority in your life. When I accept God's authority, when I accept that He is Lord, that He is this one who is Yud Hey Vav Hey, this covenant God, when I accept that, then I will also accept the calling that He's putting on my life to go and do what He requires of me. And maybe what He's requiring of you is just to phone somebody and just encourage them. Maybe He's asking you to go to a different place, to go and stay there. I don't know what God is requiring of you today. But I want to say, it's in your power to choose life, to choose to serve Him in a wonderful, wonderful way, and to see His miraculous hand of redemption being revealed. What will you choose? I know what I've chosen. I chose to say, I will submit myself to His authority. I choose that. And I choose to go where He tells me to go. I choose to do what He tells me to do. Whatever He's requiring of you tonight, be willing. Have a willing heart, not a hardened heart. It's all about seeing your destiny and my destiny changed because of our decisions. Our decisions to submit ourselves to His authority. And to submit ourselves to the calling that He puts upon our lives. To go and do. Not to harden our hearts. Not to just want to be out of the trouble and say words that means nothing. Like Pharaoh did. So I will repent. And then, when the problem stops, to keep on living in a hardened heart. Now let us soften our hearts and allow God to come in the fullness of His grace and of His mercy, and to come and reveal Himself to every one of us. May God bless you in this week as you continue to walk in obedience, to listen and do what He says, because you've accepted His authority as Lord in your life. God bless you.